the 30-second. All right, I guess we're live. We're jumping right into it. Hey, Todd, how's it going? Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Westward Bees. My name is Brian. I'm in Colorado.
My name is Todd. I'm in California. Yeah, things are going good, Brian. Just hanging out.
Right.
We actually had a whatchamacallit, a supercell west of me just a little while ago. It looks a little cloudy like on my background right now, but we actually had a confirmed supercell that it was in the middle of nowhere. But
Wow.
I don't know if it touched the ground, but it's supposed to rain like an inch on Saturday and Sunday, so I won't be doing any bee work.
We actually had some dark skies today, working this afternoon. I pulled some bees from 1 yard around 2 o'clock, and the skies were looking pretty dark. Got a little bit of sprinkles, a little bit of thunder. I saw a lightning bolt, but I was able to get my bee stuff done, and I am not going to complain about having rain at any point this year the way we're at right now. So
Yeah, you guys
I'm
need
going to
it.
take that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually feeling pretty good. There was a while when I was worried about the honey harvest because of the water situation we're having, but I realized it's more about the reservoirs that are built up and the snowpack. So if we get regular rains throughout this season, I think the honey harvest will be okay.
Yeah.
It's just that everyone's freaking out about water in their lawns and everything, and that has more to do with what's sitting in the reservoirs than what the forecast is going to be. They're talking super El Nino. Have you heard the forecast for that? So that could probably mean some volatile weather for us, and probably a bit of rain and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'm I'm not going to hold my breath for that, but if it does hit, it's going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah. So Todd, I'm at a totally different place with my bees that you are. You're talking about your orange flow is done. You've got all of your supers on already. Have you pulled any, like what happens after oranges? Is there a dearth or does it go to something else? Are you still in a flow?
No. Well, actually, wait. Yeah, I am, because driving around, I could see privet blooming, which is not supposed to be blooming right now. Oranges are supposed to be going right now. So Mother Nature is like 3 weeks ahead of schedule around here. But in a typical year, oranges stop. We get like about a 2-week lull, and then the tallow trees and the privet start showing up. And so you got to get the orange off before they start mixing all that in there.
Okay.
I mean, there's still white honeys, but you know, if you want orange, you better get it off.
Sure.
So yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know what's going on outside anymore. It's just I'm giving up this year because we've had so much water. There's water in the ground. I know it's opposite of you guys, and it's always the other way around.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just kind of go with the flow. But I will say this: I am ahead of the bees this year, even though I have not one piece of wood left to give them. I have 0 boxes. So, you know, it is what it is. But at least I'm ahead of them. They're not making.
You've got all your honey supers on your colonies.
I've got.
How many is that per colony?
Some have 4, a lot have 3. There's just a couple that have 2 that were just very, you know, tiny hives that are their queens are gonna get replaced here later in the late spring, early summer. So yeah, everything's out there. But I am going to transition into mediums and use those as supers, and then all of the deeps that I have out there, I can, you know, put into singles and doubles, which I'm probably going to do doubles from now on. I've done the single thing, and it's just not working for me in my time, the time that I have here in the spring. Now, if it was if it was a different timed flow, then it would probably work better, but it's not going to work for me.
So just to clarify, right now you're running single deep 10 frame brood chambers. So double deeps.
Doubles, yeah.
Okay. And then do you run a queen excluder between that and your supers?
Yes, sir. Yep.
And all of your supers at this point are deeps.
Everything's deeps. I don't have anything but deeps. So
Okay.
I've got
And you
100 and oh, I think I've got about 100 and I'm not big. I have like 150, 160 deeps.
okay.
So, you know, it is what it is. I've got 49 colonies out there right now. So it's, the rest of the boxes are out. Everything's out there. Like I said.
Now, now you talked about some of like 3 or 4 supers. When you super up your colonies to make honey, are you putting one deep on at a time? Because that's a bigger space than a medium, which I'm used to.
So in normal years I would, but they wanted to swarm
Yeah.
in February. So I had to give them room. I didn't want to do it, but I did. And so I started stacking 2 boxes on everything to see which ones would move into them and start storing or spreading out. It worked out. If I just did 1 box at a time, I know I would have been behind at some point, and it would have been a big mess. So
Now I did something similar, Todd. I added now I do 8 frame deeps as
mm,
my brood chamber,
me too.
and I do mediums as my honey supers. I added a third deep. Same thing as you. My bees are 3 weeks, 4 weeks early. They were building up really quickly. It was a really warm winter, so
Yeah.
everything was just boosting. I put a third box on, and a lot of times I'm pulling those off as they built up. But I was using that as a brood chamber. I didn't put a queen
Mm.
excluder in. I was allowing them to build up into that third box. Did you put a queen excluder on at that point?
No, I pushed it. I let them go up into a third box, and then I put the excluder on top of that, and then I started supering from there. But then I did break that back down into doubles.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
knew that I was going to need some equalizing. So that's what I did. Um, it was crazy this year. I do not remember. There's never been a year I can remember where it was
Yeah.
like this. I mean, I a guy, a beekeeper that's in my club. He and I bought queens out of Hawaii the second week of February because we were at that point. The bees
Yeah.
were busting out, so we started splitting down a little bit and putting queens in. It was chaotic, but
Yeah. I remember.
now, so
Both of us have a couple of years under our belt with beekeeping, and we kind of go into the year with the plan. We know what we're going to do, and we have an idea of when we're going to do it, but we also understand there is some variation in the weather
yep,
that can impact those plans. However, this year, that variation has been so dramatic that a lot of my plans have just gone out the window, and I've started going to other plans as well, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just everything is booming so hard. I think I called tonight catapulting into spring. That's
mm-hmm.
definitely what it's felt like for me. I've gone to, usually I get an opportunity to split colonies back before they start swarming, and that just I missed that whole period there completely.
Yeah,
So I have colonies that, like I said, I threw a third deep on for their brood chamber. They've gone into that brood chamber completely. They've filled out because that was all frames. I didn't have much drawn comb at all because I only had like 10 colonies die out this year. So that drawn comb got used up really, really quick. My first round of pulling splits, all that
yeah.
drawn comb disappeared. So there's Tom and Melissa. Hey, Tom and Melissa. So we just everything so fast. So those colonies that got third boxes, some of them still have swarmed on me already. The ones
Mm-hmm.
that didn't get third boxes, some of them have, but some of them haven't because those were my smallest ones. But I'm still going around. I'm going around now, Todd, and we're getting up there in age. I'm not 30 years old anymore. I'm not going to be running around like Tom Sauceman, all day long. I don't have that. I don't have that Energizer Bunny kind of energy in the bee yard anymore. But I did once. There he is. See, I provoked him.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, how's it going, fellas?
Good. Does this look familiar? Look, you were. I
Yes, it
keep pointing
does.
because my
That
finger
was the first.
disappears.
That was the first yard we split,
Yeah, that's the Morrison yard. Absolutely. So
and
it
then
looks a little greener, maybe a little bit greener,
little
but
bit.
but not too much. Yeah.
Brian,
So
my
we're
mind
just
is blown by the fact that
yeah.
I can look out across. I mean, I don't even know how many miles. I mean, miles across the open desert near you, and see nothing but brown. Not one color in sight. And that brood nest is being backfilled. I can't
Oh,
understand it. Are you still experiencing the same thing
oh,
currently?
Yeah. Yep. So I'm
Wow.
running around. Um, gosh, I have colonies that have swarmed already. I have colonies that are on the edge of swarming. So I'm just trying my best to just to go around and be thorough. I'm not going to rush. If a colony's going to swarm, it's going to swarm. That's okay. You
Mhm.
know, in the past, I'd be like, if I see queen cells, what I would typically do is I'd take a frame, put a queen cell in the bottom box, put a double screen board, put a queen cell in the top box, go in the opposite direction. So I have two different boxes with queen cells. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm just cutting things back to one queen cell in one box. And I'm giving them I'm actually giving them two honey supers right now without a queen excluder, because if they've already swarmed, um, they are not going to put brood up in those two boxes. The only thing they can put up in there is honey. So I'm going to
Mhm.
give them that with no queen excluders at all. Um, so I'm just trying to keep up. I went into one yard today and they were swarming as I was walking in there. They ended up swarming. Todd, you know what rabbit brush is, right? Do you have rabbit brush out in
no,
California? Okay.
never
Well,
heard of it.
it's like a wild bush kind of. It's very obviously drought tolerant. They ended up swarming on the backside of that rabbit brush. If I showed up at that yard 30 minutes later, I wouldn't have even seen it there because it was on the backside. So as I walked into the yard, I see bees flying around settling into it. So I
I,
gave them like 20 minutes to settle in. What's up, Todd?
I was just going to say I've seen that around here, but in the upper elevations, not on the valley
Okay.
floor.
Okay. Yep. So I let them settle in, started working colonies in that yard. Once they settled in, I tried to catch them, but it was one of those, it was a weird bush situation. I probably should have had like a sheet or something that I was shaking bees onto. So I
Mhm.
ended up just vacuuming them up. But I'm going to this is what I do. When I get a big swarm, I try to turn those into comb honey makers, because you know that swarm wants to make comb, right?
Yeah.
They're built for making comb. So I took that swarm and I put it in an 8-frame box with a queen excluder. So it's got 8 frames, 1 frame of drawn comb and brood, because I was like, I'll pull a frame of brood from one of these colonies to give to it to try to lock it in. And then I gave them a queen excluder and one box full of my comb frames. So it's
Mhm.
frames that are foundationless that I've made comb in before, so you
Mhm.
can see the beeswax all around them. And I put those in my backyard because those are going to be heavy management supers. I have to go in there and making sure they're pulling them out nice and straight. But if I can get them to pull out one box of comb honey for me, you guys know what you can get for comb honey at the market. So
Yeah.
just one
Mhm.
box would be really nice. So that was the largest swarm I've caught so far. So that's what I'm going to do with that one.
I don't know if I kind of doubt it's happening up in your area, Brian. Maybe Tom, you've seen it, but I know a lot of guys are talking about getting plugged out in the brood nest, and that's true, but I'm getting double plugged out. I'm getting both nectar and pollen. I don't think there was a month where pollen didn't come in this year. I saw
Mhm.
pollen coming in January. No, it wasn't chicken scratch dust.
Mhm.
I saw, well, it was orange, so I was thinking it was dandelion. December, I saw like a yellowish, reddish color come
Mhm.
in. I mean, I never didn't see pollen come in. And so everything I have is like it's loaded with pollen. So they're putting pollen and nectar in the brood nest, and my queens are like going, "Oh, what the heck?" You know, I mean, I could have put pollen traps out in January. I probably would have. I would have made some, so I would have collected a nice chunk of pollen, but I don't have pollen boxes or traps.
Do you have? I was just going to ask if you have any pollen traps. So Appa may recently come out with a new. They kind of redesigned their systems as far as that goes. And one thing I was pretty pumped about is they've never kept much for 8-frame equipment before, and they developed a new bottom board that I can utilize with my wooden boxes. And I bought 6 of them at Nobby, and specifically for pollen trapping. Now they haven't made it out into the bee yards yet because we've been, taking care of things that are a little more important, splitting, producing nucleus colonies, things like that. But, I said something to Melissa. I'm like, hey, where do you want to set these? They kind of need to be somewhat close to the house so you can turn them off and on. But I was going to ask and suggest if you had the ability to do that might be convenient. But I was also going to suggest too, if they plug out some frames, do you have the ability to bring them back, freeze them for a few days, throw them in a box inside of an area that you want to worry about pests, and introduce some new either combs or foundations and let them, like Brian was talking about, let them kind of use it as a factory to produce some more combs, and you can then maybe feed those back to them. Just a thought.
Yeah. No, I thought around the same similar ideas, but it's all hands on deck still. I have no extra equipment. I mean,
I got you. 2
months ago, you could have found a box full of drawn comb in my garage, a couple boxes, lots of boxes. Not now. I don't even have an empty frame or a piece of foundation. Everything I own or bought is out there right now. I mean,
every in the spring, Todd, I go through and I try to replace old boxes that are falling apart with new boxes that I brought over winter. And then at this part in the spring, I'm going through all those old boxes, seeing what I can salvage because I've already used up all those new ones. And they end up back into the production anyway, just because that's what I have.
I did the same thing. Uh-oh, did we lose Brian?
Yeah, he's froze up right now.
Uh-oh. I'll tell you what, though. I think I sacrificed. I think I might have shot myself in the foot a little bit because I need some new drawn comb, and so I waxed an awful lot of foundation this year, and it's all out there. So I've seen them drawing it. I've seen them filling it. I haven't checked back to see how full it is yet. But it was a crazy spring. I'm looking forward to the summer when it slows down for me. So that'll be nice. And then
I feel like it's just started.
I know, right? And then, so I had one bucket left from last year, summer honey, and I told Brian this a little while ago. And I bottled it, and I have a show in 2 weeks, a week from this Saturday, and that stuff is crystallizing out in the garage. That it's boxed up, it's bottled and boxed up, and it's out there. It's not cold outside, and I'm thinking, how is this doing this time of year? And then I remembered that last bucket had some blue curl in it, and Brad's in here. I think he's got a bottle of blue curl up there at his house that's probably solid as a rock, and then you could hammer nails with it. I mean, it's
hard, huh?
It's cement, yeah. So I think a lot of that got mixed in because that last bucket or two came out at the very end of summer when blue curl was going. So I'm going to steer clear. I'm going to get all of my summer honey off, and then I will harvest some blue curl, but I'm going to save it for creamed honey. My creamed honey, because it does a great job of crystallizing. So
might as well capitalize on something that's already going to happen, right?
Yeah.
Try not to fight it. I think Brad's talked about that before. Comes to a certain plant or a certain nectar source that crystallizes quickly. Don't fight it. Just capitalize on it.
Yeah.
That's how I got into creamed honey. That exact same thing. I started bringing honey to the market and was fighting that. First of all, I was trying to educate people that there's nothing wrong with crystallized honey,
Nope.
but I was also trying to fight it and liquefy and liquefy and liquefy and bring it to the market like that. So got to the point where I was like, I'm just going to work with it. I'm going to crystallize it in a really nice way. And we started making creamed honey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is what it is this year. Just go with the flow, like Tom said. Just go with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And we are so early. This is part of why I'm like, if my colonies swarm, it's okay, because if they have queen cells now, and if I go back in 3 weeks to check for queen rightness, that's kind of hitting the normal timing of our flow, the where it's supposed to be. So if I get a brand new queen out of it, and it's good timing for the honey flow, but that's the big thing. Is it going to be good timing for the honey flow? Who knows this year? So I'm just going to try to, what else can I do though? Because here's the thing. Today, I was thinking about this today. Today is April 9th. Before this year, this is the earliest I have ever caught a swarm. And it's like a week prior to my previous earliest. Mm-hmm. I've got a whole bunch of colonies that have swarmed already, and colonies have been swarming for like 3 weeks. So what am I going to do to hold my colonies back in the next month from swarming? I can't keep skimming back frames and putting foundation in. So if they're going to swarm at this point, I'm just going to let them to get them set up with a new queen. And if they end up not requeening, I've got, as you can see in this yard, I've got a bunch of splits all out and about that are there to repopulate and requeen any colony that doesn't get queen. So I'm playing the kind of the shuffling frames from one place to another, pulling old queens out in a nuke and moving it to a new yard and making her start over. That's how I'm getting a lot of the colonies out of my backyard. I'll take a single deep 8 frame, pack it up with 7 frames of brood and a frame of food, and then move it out in a single. And then I'll double it up with foundation once it's out there. And as I've been taking splits from other colonies, I've been dropping 2 frames of like foundation that's ready to be emerging into that second box of those. So I'm even giving them a boost to get ready for the honey flow there. So those colonies haven't gotten honey supers yet, but everything else, even if that queen has been pulled, has gotten a honey super. And if she hasn't been pulled, then that colony's getting 2 honey supers. And at this point, I'm not even putting queen excluders on, because I feel like that can compress them down at this point. I'll roll the dice. I'll put queen excluders in later as I go around next. But they need space, and that's all I can do to keep them from swarming. And that's the best I can do. And if they end up swarming anyway.
Are those queens that are swarming, are they like 2 years old or older?
No, it's just spring, Todd. That's what they want to do.
Because I know I requeened everything I had last year, and I'm like Charlie. I'm going to start requeening every year, and I'm in the middle of that right now. It seems to me that the 1-year-old queens, they're not apt to swarm as much as a 2-year-old or older. I mean, there's conditions that will cause them to swarm, overcrowding, obviously the nest getting plugged out. But for the most part, you can control them as they're building. If you keep up with them while they're building, they're not going to, typically they won't swarm. At least that's what I've seen. So that's been my experience. And I don't know. So I'm going to start doing it every year, requeen every year.
When in relation to your flow do you do that? Like after your flow, post solstice? Do you have a plan?
Yeah, it's going to have to be post solstice because typically the flow starts like this week in a normal year instead of in March. So March, it's hard for me. The reason why I had to get queens out of Hawaii is, 1, that was the only place to get them. 2, my drones they were just barely touching purple ice stage. and there was no way that I was going to have, I could wait for them to mature to raise some queens. It wouldn't have worked out. So it's the time of year for me. And that was like what I was talking about, going from singles to doubles. So yeah, I'm gonna, I'll requeen probably in late June, maybe July, somewhere around there, wherever the cutoff is for wildflower, most of it, and then go from there. And then those will be fresh queens for next year's orange, and then just do that. And I'll hit them with formic acid and hopefully in late February, early March, and then by the time April is around, they're fresh and ready and thriving, hopefully. So we'll see.
I'm taking a break from grafting right now because I have nowhere to put queens.
I have no boxes.
You know what I mean? So I'll wait a week and then I'll do another round of grafts, because as I start going through those nukes, if there's some without queens, I'll use those queen cells to try again, or I'll use those ones that haven't brought queens back and just spread all those frames out between the other colonies and boost those. But once that first round of splits and everything gets done, then I'm going to start selling queens, and then I'll start grafting and just kind of rolling them around like that. Because I have a whole bunch of nukes. I dropped all of those Mike Palmer 4/4s. I tripled them up as the spring got going, and I've dropped those down to one level right now. So those are all the frames that I pulled out and I put into a single 8 frame to move out of my backyard. So now they're all down to 4 frames. They're raising queens right now, and those are the ones that I'll sell those queens throughout the year, drop a new queen cell in until the flow ends. And that'll be a nice way to make some extra money, because people right now aren't buying nukes. That's a big problem I'm having. There's a lot of people in my area who are selling nukes, and there's a lot of bees that overwintered because it's been so warm. So a lot of folks that are your typical customers for nukes aren't needing them, and are probably even trying to sell nukes this year, because lots of people have had a good overwintering year. So I figure if I can't sell nukes, I'm going to sell queens, and that's going to the last thing I need is to turn a nuke into another production colony that I need to take care of. I need to keep my numbers down to a point where I can take care of my bees instead of getting big eyes and going that way.
Yeah.
There's Matt. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah.
It's all Matt's fault. I blame the fondant.
I was just going to say
that's the thing. You really have no idea. There's the really warm winter. There's all these different factors that are in play, and you're like, what's the reason? I have no idea. I have thought about maybe next year asking Matt to just make me a batch or two of fondant that doesn't have all of the additives in it, because I definitely think that my experience in feeding Apis biologics, particularly in the past, is it really boosts the brood rearing. Yes. And if that's not what you want, then that can then you might want to try something without it, I guess, would be how I'd want to say that.
That Apis is crazy. I mean, that gets them going like a rocket. Obviously, that's what Ian calls it, but
yeah. I had one year, it was like mid-April. I was starting to freak out, Todd, because I was going through my colonies and I had like 25 nukes sold, and everyone was super slow that year. The colonies weren't brooding up, and I was like, what am I going to do? I started feeding Apis biologics, and a week later, as I go into those colonies, I was like, okay, now I can make splits. And that's when I was sold on that product. But it's a tool. You have to use it properly, right? You can't just use it willy-nilly. You have to think about how you're going to use it, what intended outcomes you want with it. And thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Yeah. But you have to be intentional with how you use it. You can't You
No,
can't just
yeah.
put it in your syrup all the time and think it's just an additive that's good for your bees. Tom, how are your bees looking? I heard you talk a little bit about it on Keith's chat. They're looking good. You said you're about a week behind us. That's about what you're seeing?
Probably, maybe even a little bit further, maybe 10 days,
So
10, 11, 12 days.
no colonies that have swarmed so far.
No.
Good Lord.
Well,
Holy cow.
not that I have seen. Sometimes
Right.
one can sneak past you, and we had some colonies that were overwintering in triple deeps. Now, obviously, they didn't stay in the bottom deep for sure. Probably migrated to the top deep and a half, but they had absolutely filled all three of those out, and I was blown away. Matter of fact, one of the triple deeps that I had overwintered in because it had all food. And my thought and my idea was, you know what, the colony is big enough to be able to care for the comb. I don't want to have to maintain it myself. The bees are going to maintain it better than I can, and it's just a good spot to store it. So that's kind of where I'd left some of those larger colonies like that. But one that I gone through today, I was blown away. You know how difficult it is to try to find a queen in 3 deep 8-frame boxes? Good Lord. I mean, there's bees on top of bees, and you're like, at some point, and they actually had some swarm cells in there, and a couple were capped. Now, I never found her, but looking at the size of that colony, I feel about 80% certain that she didn't leave. So the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? Doesn't matter where the queen's at. Time is money. And I'm not going to spend copious amounts of time looking for her. I split it down. And what I did do is I threw in some splits. We usually do about 3 frames of brood, 1 frame of food, and then maybe a comb or so. And then we'll throw some foundations in there and kind of roll with it like that. Well, I went ahead and put cells in there. I make notes on top because the ones that had cells that were capped, I'm not going to introduce queens in those. I'm going to let those hatch out, and I'm going to let those mate in my yards. And that'll be a couple less that I might roll back into my operation, is my thought. I will have a bunch that I need to turn out on the very first part of May for customers that have already purchased from us, and we want to make sure that we get those taken care of first. But we want to replace any dead outs that we had, which again for us was probably the best year, much like what you were talking about, Brian. Not saying it's because I'm some great beekeeper, just saying that somehow, some way, I feel like that things kind of worked out. Maybe the timing of what we were doing was appropriate as per the strength of the queens that we had. So there's probably a lot of variables playing there. But yeah, we're definitely behind where you were at, which I'm surprised because it's very green here. I mean, it's green, right, right. And I don't know. The reality is that our big nectar producing plants just haven't opened up yet. And I think it's fixing to drop here very quickly because some of our bush honeysuckle, which tends to produce a lot of nectar, is getting ready to open. And so where our Russian or our autumn olives and Russian olive bushes are starting to bloom right now. So just kind of, it's like a holding game. You're trying to manage them and set them up and get them good, but you're kind of pacing them because there's some counties are like, oh, I could feed these, but I'm like, I'm not, because I'm looking at these blooms and I'm banking on the fact that, so I have to go back and check them in 7 days. And at that point in time, if I don't see something, we'll probably drop some feed on them, but I don't think I'm going to need to in the long run. So going to let Mother Nature take care of that one.
So as you're pulling frames out to cut your colonies back, as you're doing that at this point, are you putting honey supers on yet?
I'm not. Because I've pulled a lot of frames out. And I'll checkerboard some comb as long as I've had it. And usually year over year we have some. I'll use some comb. That way they can clean them up and the queen can start laying right back at them. So I can kind of keep that momentum going because I want to keep as many bees populating the boxes as possible. So I want a fast bounce back. So we'll use some drawn comb, but I also need to draw out a lot of foundations. We purchased a little over 1,000 frames, and my intention is to build every one of those frames out this year. So I have to checkerboard those in too. And then much like what you had said earlier, if I find a swarm or something like that, I'm not going to set that up for honey production, even if it's a big swarm. I'm going to let those girls just draw a comb and just turn them into a factory.
Yep.
We've done that in the past. They were so good at comb drawing. I'd let them build out combs, and I'd pull them off there, and I'd start feeding them to other colonies, and I'd checkerboard more in there, and they're probably going, how are we not filling all these? How they're just in comb production mode. Those middle-aged bees, which are the prime ones for producing wax and forming those cells, that's what we're looking for. That middle-aged bee right there, and capitalizing on the strongs.
So, Tom, you went out to a yard today and you cut back colonies. You go back to that yard in 7 to 10 days. They're going to work back what you put in there. At that point, will you cut them back again, or will you add honey supers onto them at that point, or both?
My goal would be to add honey supers back at that point, because I want to get a honey production off of the actual production colonies. Now, if something weird happens and they start to build swarm cells, I'm going to break them down again. But I'd prefer not to do that, because it is a huge time suck to be able to have to do that. But you're trying to manage colonies that all act a little bit differently. So, you're trying to put everything on the same playing field as the best that you can. And you're trying to gauge what nectar is going to be coming in based upon what type of weather you're getting. Is it cool? Is it shrinking the nectar back into plants? Is it warm and sunny and they're flying? Are you having 3 or 4 days of rain? These are all things that you're trying to account for in your head to figure out what that looks like for you 2 weeks out. Because I really don't want to go back to a colony in less than 2 weeks, unless it's for like the nucleus colonies, like I just said, maybe in about 7 to 10 days, because I need to introduce queens in, which are coming in first thing tomorrow morning. We have like 100 queens that are shipped in. So we got to go put queens in. So I'll check all my splits, and then, you'll be able to see nectar inside some of those colonies to kind of gauge whether or not you really need to go down back into those parent colonies. So I don't think I'll have to just yet, but definitely within probably, my guess is probably about 10 days, we'll be back in them again. Yeah, Melissa's always like, you need to put supers on. You need to put supers on. I'm like, no, I want them to fill up the brood nest, with some food in there, because when I come back and I steal off of them 3 supers of honey in late June or July, I don't really want it to come right back on and feed them if I don't have to. And that's kind of the reason why I don't run singles. A little bit more of a strict management, especially in an 8-frame box. I'm not running 10s like you guys. I have 2 less frames that I have to manage. So on a double deep, that's 4 less frames for me.
We're all 3.
We all
I was
run
just
8s.
going to mention this. We're all run.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Why, Brian, I was
This
in your
is
comments.
rare.
Why did I say that?
This is rare. You don't see, on these chats, you usually see guys running 10s, and we're the only ones running 8s.
That's right.
All at the same time.
Well, I didn't know that about you, Todd, but I knew that about Brian, and I completely forgot.
I did a Melissa the other day. You ready for it?
Let's hear it.
I use a quiet box sometimes. Do you know what a quiet box is, everybody? I know Todd does. We were talking about this. I'll use a nuke box as a quiet box. If I want to pull a frame out of a colony, if it's got the queen, I'll put her in an empty box, like a nuke box, close up the lid. Sometimes I'll pull a couple of frames out to lighten up that top box, whatever. So I found I was actually getting ready to, I had a triple deep brood chamber that was making queen cells. So I was pulling the queen, just like I was telling you, pulling the queen in 7 frames of brood and getting ready for it to move out. But I found the queen on like the very first frame, put it in a quiet box, went through the colony, filled up that box, dropped the other one down, and then proceeded to forget the frame with the queen in my quiet box till the next day. I walk by and I'm doing something with the chickens, and I look at that box and I'm like, I don't remember putting that frame back.
So what are we going to coin that a Melissa? Is that what you're suggesting?
Maybe.
Okay, so
at least it had a frame of bees to help it out.
Yeah.
And it was there. It was fine. It was just a little sluggish. Not sure what the heck was going on because it lost all of its colony except for one frame, But I put it back in that colony, and I'm sure it'll be fine. But
so here's another teaching moment. So Melissa and I had to move a lot of colonies. Anything that was over a double screen board had to be moved off the double screen board and started into one new yard. I really need at least one more new yard and potentially two, but I'm going to be very selective about how far I go. I'm not going to drive long distances to manage colonies. First of all, gas is running $4 a gallon. If you're running a diesel, it's $5 a gallon here in the Midwest. And I don't know what that's going to look like for us long term, but that means it's going to eat into all of our profits. Whether you're a hobbyist beekeeper and you keep them off site, keep that in mind. Time is money, and gas is not cheap anymore, right? Maybe it'll be short-lived. We don't know that, but I am not running. I really don't even want to have colonies more than 30 minutes away from my house. So we've kind of talked about maybe trying to put out some feelers to see about finding another yard or two. We've already started one more and put 30 two-way pallets, which honestly, we were working them tonight at the edge of a field today. And I'm kind of loving it. It's a perfect height, especially when you're going through and you're checking frames. I'm using the bucket that I have, that a 5-gallon bucket. We put ground up, basically shredded junk mail in, and then some of our stuff for our smokers to light our smokers. And I'm plopping the thing down and I tear. So this is something Melissa and I do a little different too. So a little story time here. Double deep 8s. I actually take the entire top box off, flip the lid upside down. I set my top box down, and I'm managing backwards from what Melissa's doing. So, and I'm doing this for a reason. She likes her method. I like what I'm doing. So I'm going through the bottom box first, managing my 4 to 5 frames of brood down there if I have it. If not, I pull it from the top. And then if I don't find the queen there, I move to the top, start moving through it. When I find her, if her mark needs to be brightened up a little bit from that year, I go ahead, because I carry last year's paint pen, paint mark them, and then I pick her up and I set her down in the bottom where I've already managed. Because I'll work through the brood nest and I push the frames together on one side. So if I find her, I push them down in the center. I let her go in the center, so I don't have to go back through those frames. So she's safe there. Yep. So ideally, I'd find her in the bottom, and I've already managed that. Then I can go through the top, pull out what I need, checkerboard stuff in, and then I put the top box back on. Melissa was doing it the opposite, which no right or wrong, it just is what it is. She wanted to go through the top first. And I'm like, but if you find her up top, which where a bunch of them have been, I'm like, now you have to cage her. And I'm like, the thing that we had at Brian's, I'm like, where we caged that queen and she was sitting on the stand, I'm like, is making me nervous, because we all get tied up in our work and forget about doing these things. So, even like what you did, Brian, you had the quiet box, you set the one frame aside. But sometimes through our management strategies and what we're doing, we tend to get complacent about things, because we're moving very quickly. So, it kind of is what it is. And everybody has something that works well for them. And I think that's what you need to do. So again, Melissa and I do things differently, but our management goal at the end is the same. So.
You brought up a good point that reminded me, I should invite you to come out to my club and speak. And then the next day we could go to my yard and I'll have you just mark all the queens.
Hey,
I like your style, man.
Hey, I'll tell you what, I love marking queens. I really do. I mean, everybody probably on here, I know Eric knows, and there's probably a bunch of people know. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll see the stupid stuff that I post on there. And, that was one of the out. And so for anybody who doesn't know, there might be some people on there that don't know me, but I was out in Colorado with Brian, helping him make splits. One of the yards that's behind him in the picture was one of them that Melissa, myself, and Brian all had split. And then as I was going through, so I always carry in my jacket 3 things. I carry a paint pen. So like moving on now, when we're getting new queens, I'll have 2 colors of paint pen. Last year and this year, I always keep at least 3 or 4 of the JZBZ cages in my pocket. And I also carry a little bitty pen light so I can see it out inside the cells. So I'm pen lights for seeing the cells, to be able to see eggs, things like that. Pens for marking, because I don't care to find the queens. I just want to know what year they're from, is specifically what I want to know. And then, of course, if you find a queen, you can cage her, set her aside, whatever that might look like. But during that whole thing, I had my pens that we brought out. And obviously, I'm from St. Louis. My elevation is probably 600 feet, maybe a little bit higher than that. Brian Zavada's is running 5,700 feet, somewhere in that neck of the area. So I don't know if mine might it be because of the difference of maybe because it was just warm. When I usually take my paint pen before I dot a queen and I dab it on the side of the box, you kind of indent the little felt plunger on there. And what happened when I did that, because I always do it on the side of a frame or the side of the box, this paint pen, I don't know if it's again because of the pressure difference, literally puked paint all over this frame, and it kind of cascaded down the side of this frame. And it happened to catch a couple of drones down there before I marked the queen. And I didn't actually drown her, but I have before. But that was a drone. I took a picture of and posted it, being sarcastic. I said, hey, marked my first queen today. How did I do? And it was a drone, and it was just paint all over the poor little guy. So anyway, that was fun. But no, I did not kill any of Brian's queens.
I hope he finds a virgin fast so he doesn't get ridiculed for most of his life.
I watched Tom a little bit when we were working colonies, and I watched how he used his jacket with all of his tools inside. And I'm like, why don't I do that more? And I was wearing my jacket a bit this week just so I can go faster through stuff and not have to worry about getting stung. And I learned why I don't do that. I like my jacket, except for one thing. The pockets don't have like the elastic on top, so they're kind of loose and open. So today, like 3 different times, I dropped stuff that I had in those jacket pockets that I'm like, forget this. I'm just going to use my pant pockets. That's why I've gone back to that, because all it needs is that little elastic to tighten up whatever's in that pocket, and it would be perfect. But otherwise, it just falls right out.
Yeah, I'm the same way. My pockets don't hold anything. So I'm constantly losing pins or whatever's in my pocket. Like I use lumber crayons to mark on my lids to write notes or abbreviation. And sometimes I have to go hunt for that because it fell out of my pocket. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the more propolis you get on that thing, the more it'll stick in the pocket. Because I've had that before where certain marking pens, because of the size of the opening inside my jacket pocket, there's some little openings made specifically for little cylindrical pieces, like a marking pen or what have you, flashlight.
Yep.
Occasionally they've fallen out on me before too. And I noticed that when they get propolis on them, they tend to hang in there a little bit better. So, finding a jacket, I think sometimes people look at it for protection and such. I look at it for comfort. I am not looking at a jacket that will keep me from getting all the stings. I expect at some point in time, if the mesh fabric is against my skin, I'll take a sting, and I'm okay with that. The point is, when they're really mad, I'm just not trying to get stung 8 or 9, 10 times. I might take the 1 or 2, and I'm fine with that. But I'm looking for comfort, something that's very light, something that's breathable, and then something that I can see out of the veil, which sometimes you don't think about that. All the mesh fabrics, sometimes I have a hard time seeing out of them. And, I need something that works for me. But equally as important, when you look at something, when you're in a bee yard, you'll learn what tools that you like to carry or what you might carry, and make sure that that jacket accommodates those said tools. I mean, otherwise you could probably make some small modifications, maybe sew a pocket in or do something different that maybe suits you a little bit better. But there's no reason we can't build efficiencies into our tools and our, protective wear and things like that to make it easier on us. So that's just something that I found that, like I said, works for me specifically. Melissa likes to do things a little differently again. And I mean, let's be honest, she's wrong. But you know what? That's okay. She can be wrong.
You gonna stir the hornet's nest?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna kick it.
It took Eric a while to get a good jacket, but I'm glad he found one that he likes.
What jacket did you
He
purchase,
immediately
Eric?
went to Nitro.
He got a sting stopper, didn't he? If I remember,
I'm not sure.
I'm trying to think of what he was wearing when he was at your place. I thought it was a sting stopper, but I could be wrong. I've never actually owned a sting stopper.
I haven't either. I do like my gloves though. The Apis Tactical. I really enjoy those quite a bit.
Me too.
I find myself wearing gloves more and more these days because when I get stung on my hands mostly. And springtime work often involves a lot of shaking of bees, shaking frames, checking for queen cells. So to go faster, I found myself wearing gloves. But I'll just put one on. So I'm left-handed. I'll put one on the right hand so I can at least have my fingers on my left hand if I need some sort of dexterity, unless they start stinging up my left hand, and then I'll go put on that glove too. But I've really enjoyed those quite a bit, and I haven't. That's the first time I've ever said that about beekeeping gloves.
Yeah, yeah. You'll notice little things where on maybe gloves you're wearing or a jacket you have that you might find that you don't like. So maybe your first jacket you buy, you might find another one that might be more accommodating for you. I don't know. That's one of those things where you kind of have to think about what you might want or price budget, things like that. And you're like, okay, that's just what I'm going to go with, or if you're just a person that wears a veil, I like the nitro gloves, but the nitro gloves are horrible in the Midwest when you have all the humid, your hands sweat profusely. My hands didn't sweat profusely when I was in Colorado, which was really nice. It was very comfortable. But it's nice. It keeps the propolis off my steering wheel. It keeps the propolis off other areas that I don't want it, So, and honestly, even though the bees can sting through it, they don't typically try to, because I don't think they can smell me through the nitro glove. If they try to sting me, it's usually where the nitro glove ends, and my cuff here sometimes will slide back and forth just a little bit, and they'll tag me around here. So, it is what it is. Like I said, I'm not trying not to get stung. I'm just trying not to get stung a lot.
Yeah, I'm the same, and I don't want to get stung in the face. If I can avoid getting stung in the face, I will.
I absolutely hate getting stung in the fingers. I'll take a sting of just about anywhere else, but I cannot stand it. When I'm grabbing stuff, I grab a pin at work or something like that, and I've got a stinger stuck in there, and I can't hold it for like 2 days, or grab a cup.
Yep.
I mean, brush my teeth. I mean, whatever it is, it just sucks having stingers in your fingers.
Or if you get stung on the ring finger, right about there.
Yeah.
One of your first stings of the year get tagged right about there. And that was a story for when we were out at Brian's place. Typically the first few stings of the year, when you haven't been stung for a few months, I'll tend to swell a little bit more. Nothing profusely though. I mean, it's not a big deal. But when I was out there and got stung right above my ring by like a ½ inch, it started swelling and I wasn't thinking about it. And then my ring started getting even more tight. And I'm like, and I kept touching the end of my finger to make sure it wasn't numb. And then it started to get a little bit tingly. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I should do something about this. And then so we paused what we were doing there and worked on getting my ring off. And Miss Kathy, I don't know that she's in here right now, but I'll tell you what, she about gloved my finger trying to get, she was pulling on that with all of her might. We got it off, all was well. And, that was a fun experience. So,
the place that I get stung the most are in my knees.
Really?
Since I went from singles to doubles, a lot of times I forget picking up that top box and giving a little puff between the boxes, and then so I crack it and I lift it up and just if they're in a bad mood, they'll just come out sideways at me, and the first thing they hit are my knees.
No kidding.
Yeah, they sting right through my Wranglers, and I was a lot like it happens almost every week. I'll have one hive if I don't smoke them, and I'm learning to smoke them, just a little bit, but yeah, they'll come at me and they'll just zap me right on the kneecap or right above it, and it's usually the right knee. I don't know why they like my right knee, but more
That's
on the
interesting.
right. Yeah,
I almost never get stung below the waist. Almost never. And that's interesting to me. Melissa will get stung below the waist occasionally. I almost never do. The places that I take stings, and I don't wear a jacket that's really, really big and bulky. I want something that is fairly, it's not tight, but it's not overly big and long. I don't want something that's big and bulky and shuffling, or it just drives me nuts. And when my jacket will ride up, actually, it'll ride up a little bit here. And I'll tell you, right here on the love handle, here and on the other side, that's where the bees will tag me. They'll tag me because I'm sweating on the love handle. They'll get me on the wrists, or when I smash bees, with the nitriles, they'll sting me on the fingertips. Those are the areas that I get stung the most.
I rarely get stung through pants as well. And in the summer, I'll wear pants. I don't wear shorts, but I'm wearing as light a pants as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I'll wear like shirts like this, which are super light, but they're long sleeve just to have coverage. And I feel like that does so much for preventing stings on me, except for my hands. I would say 95% of my stings are on my hands. But I've never had that, Todd, with bees stinging you at your knees. That's a new one for me.
It's just the first thing they when they're coming out between those boxes, it's the first thing they see. But a lot of times, I would say like eight times out of 10, they've already stung my jeans, and then when I move around, that stinger's just hovering above my skin, waiting until the surface of the jean catches up to my skin, and then that's when I get hit. And I look down, I would see a bee, but then I see the little white dot on my jeans, and that's just like the big dinner bell or the big come here sign, and then
that's right.
Yeah.
I had some bees when we moved to bees the other day. That's when we set up on two-way pallets. For whatever reason, these bees were just down. I mean, you want to make some bees mad, put them in a box, screen their entrance, bounce them on a truck for 15, 20 minutes, and then pull the screen off. I'll tell you what, that will show you what you're made of. But these bees got absolutely bent. And we usually set them down and wait a few minutes, let them settle in. And then from the back, I'll reach across and open the screens up. But they will find you immediately is what will happen. And I'll tell you, as I was walking away, I wear a fairly thin work pants it's made by a company called True Work. And so they're kind of a moisture wicking style pant. And one nailed me right in the tush as I was walking away, and it kind of made me jump on that one. I was like, whoa, kind of trying to get your attention there a little bit. So, Brian, you were talking earlier about you pulled a Melissa, right, with the whole queen and the quiet box. Okay, so I'm going to tell on myself as something that I did the other day, and it probably, I figure it cost me about $1,000.
Yep.
So I would consider this an expensive mistake. Just being complacent is what it was. We had a swarm that was last year. I have no idea what hive it come from. I don't even know if it came from one of my hives, because after I found this swarm, it was like 10 pounds, huge. It was not a marked queen. I don't know where they came from. I went back through and checked my colonies, and I had not found any colonies that had swarmed on this one. So a 10-pound ball of bees hanging on a fence line right behind the hive. So you would think it came out of my yard, but I wasn't able to find where they came from. Anyway, we set up boxes, and we used this, like you talked earlier about just building wax. This thing pumped out, I don't know how many boxes of wax for me. Well, I left the hive sitting off the hive stands, but against the fence, which is about 10 feet behind it. And I just set a couple bricks down, and it sat there all last year, and I never moved it. Well, I told Melissa, I'm like, I don't want that hive back there anymore. I want them on the stands. It's halfway kind of sitting in the dirt down there. It's going to, rot out that bottom board. So anyway, I said, I want to move it. We'll move it to another yard. Well, this was a double deep colony. I hadn't even broken into it yet, but I know it was completely full. It was heavy. We screened it up, threw it on the truck, took it to a bee yard, one of our furthest ones out, actually. And we also took some other splits out there, set them all out, ripped all the entrances off, the screen off the entrances, no big deal. Well, what I did do apparently is I forgot to unscreen that. And I believe I moved it on, let me think, yesterday, today's Thursday. I think it was like Monday or Tuesday I moved it out there. So for a day and a half, 2 days, I forgot to pull the screen off of this big double deep colony. When I went back to it, we were managing the colonies to make splits on these. And I opened it up, and there's a huge pile of dead bees that had overheated. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm looking, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm like, there's no way that these bees overheated on the drive. And I'm like, it wasn't even that long of a drive, and it had a screen bottom board. And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. And I happened to look around to the front entrance. It was still screened. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I have never seen so many dead bees in one pile in my entire life. Basically a double deep 8-frame box that probably had coverage on it that was absolutely enormous. There was a handful of few bees still alive on there, and they were wore out. But they were all just kind of like, the rest of the bees were all kind of like melted basically. So I ended up pulling them out, shaking them out, and then cleaning up all the frames and stuff. And I would introduce a frame here, a frame there, into other colonies. There was sheets of brood that were on these frames there. And I was so disgusted and beside myself about it. But the way I figured it out is I would have been able to split this colony twice. And typically we usually do about anywhere 50, 60, 70 pound average of honey production. So I figured that by losing that colony probably cost me about $1,000. So when you're moving colonies, don't forget to unscreen them. Don't forget to put the queens back in the colonies. Those are expensive mistakes.
At this time of the year, we're running around, we're rushing, we're trying to keep up, we're behind in everything. But sometimes it really helps to slow down. Even spending one last walk going through the bee yard, making sure you've picked everything up, you've pulled all the entrance, you know what I mean? You've done everything, just slowing down instead of rushing to the next place. I've cooked a swarm or two in a vacuum before. It's the saddest thing in the world when you go open to a box of dead bees that you caused. It's man, when you go to that box and you see the honey that's oozing out of it, that they're regurgitating up because they're trying to regulate temperature, you're like, oh, it's too late. Those are tough ones for me. I don't mind when bees die at this point because I know that's just part of everything. If a colony dies, but if it's something like that you did yourself, those are the ones that get to me.
Yeah.
That's a tough one, Tom. Thanks for sharing that. So how do you clean up those frames? Those are frames full of brood. What do you do there?
Well, I would say the likelihood of most of that brood probably being dead is probably significant. There's probably some that may have survived. But what I did do is they were all beautiful combs. And like I said, there was some bees that were still alive in there, but not a lot. Most of them were dead. I thought, you know what? I don't want to go putting too many of these good frames inside colonies. So what I did do is I would do 1 or 2 of those frames in a colony, 1 or 2 of the frames over here, and I put them in parent colonies. I did not put them in the splits because I didn't want to task my smaller splits with having to clean them up or to repair any of that stuff. I wanted the parent colony, which was much stronger, to be tasked with doing that. So I didn't want to get rid of the frames. They were good frames. They'll still use them. If the pupae inside there did die, they'll uncap them, they'll remove them, they'll clean them back out, polish them, get them ready for the next. So yes, that it'll task them with having to do something else, but those bees will do it very quickly. So I'm anxious to go back and I'm going to kind of do a quick peek just to see what those look like, because I did mark those frames.
Boy,
That was going to be my question. Yeah. I'm glad you marked them.
Did you guys happen to see Corey's post today on Facebook where he froze a spot on a comb, and he was talking about SMR. It's now SMR. It's not VSH. So the wildest thing is the bees cleaned out 100% of that spot, but then they cleared out a patch on off to one side, but they stripped the comb away. The whole entire comb was gone from where he froze, and then it looked like a keyhole, a sideways keyhole on the frame. And I'm like, wow, they even took the wax out. Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I've seen bees remove wax when you have had a treatment that sat against it. Like, for example, what is that? The Amatraz stuff. Help me out here, guys.
It's the oxalic acid. What is that? The strips? Is that what you're talking about?
Apivar?
No.
It's the Amatraz. Help me out in the crowd here. I'm having a mind blank. What's the strip they put in with the Amatraz on it?
Apivar?
The mite treatment.
Apivar?
No, it's not Apivar.
It's not Viroxan. Viroxan has oxalic.
Yeah.
Yeah, Viroxan is oxalic.
That's what I was thinking of, was Viroxan. But
I mean, maybe they do it there too, but my point was going to be as I've seen them actually remove comb behind it. I don't use. Oh, I'm sorry. Brian, you were correct. Apivar. I'm thinking Apigard. Yes, Apivar, the synthetic treatment. I have seen when I have gotten colonies that have been treated with it, they remove the comb behind it and they don't lay in there for a period of time. So I think they actually chew the wax behind it.
Well, in this case, you should find the post because it's very interesting. It went sideways. It wasn't up or down. So obviously it was no treatment. But why they chose to go sideways is like kind of wild.
So was it liquid nitrogen he did?
Yeah, he froze that center, or not center, but he put the pipe on there, whatever, and then liquid nitrogen it. I don't know, maybe the liquid nitrogen bled over, but it was.
That's what I was wondering, if like the frame was tilted and it just went underneath the PVC where the circle was. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's pretty strange, but it was weird to look at. I was like, wow, that is interesting.
So Todd, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
I'm watching you wearing that Naroa hat, and I just saw the video today with Cayman, Reynolds, and is it Eric Walgren? Is that right, Tom?
Yeah. Eric was he was at our bee symposium when Randy Oliver was here. So I talked to him for a little while.
Okay. So are you going to use Naroa this year? What are your thoughts on Naroa?
I'm going to wait. I wanted to put Formic on. Tom Nolan. I talked to Tom Nolan for almost an hour at Nabi, and I told him my concerns about it and time of year that I had to play with it. So bottom line is I wanted to use Formic already, but because the bees went nuts, I couldn't. So I'm going to do it after. I have to watch the temperatures, but I'm just going to wait a year and see what stories come out. I'm not saying it's a bad product.
Yeah.
It seems in theory to work really good. I mean, that's what Ian was using up on his farm, but I just want to get a broad, picture of everything, stories and whatever, facts.
I'm in the same boat. I'd like to gather a little bit more information. I'd like to understand it a little bit better, and waiting a year and seeing other people and having them report out would be a good way for me to do it.
And talking about Formic, did you guys watch Brad's show a couple weeks ago where the CEO was on there? That was like solid gold. I've watched it 2 times already, and I'm just every time I pick little bits up, and I wish I could have talked to him. Maybe I don't know, maybe he shows up at Nobby next year, who knows? But I mean, he really knows everything about that product.
That was a very interesting conversation for sure.
Super interesting.
So Brad, thanks. I don't know if Brad is still on, but if you are, thanks for facilitating that conversation.
That was
awesome. An interesting one for sure. Sometimes it's just a bunch of old guys hanging out, talking about bees, and sometimes it's a really, really good chat, and you learn a lot. And I don't know if you folks do this, but I use my YouTube channel as like a library of really good information. I create playlists, and I will save really good chats or really good videos that I want to go back to later in a playlist about it, like mite treatments, splits, all that kind of stuff. I've got like 20 different folders in my playlist categories for YouTube that aren't my videos. They're other people's videos that I go back to regularly. So it's just a library of resources on YouTube that I use, because you watch one good one and then you try to remember it a year from then, and it's really hard to remember them all. So that's one thing I do, and that's one that definitely went into my playlists for sure.
Yeah, I have a few that we go back to from time to time as well that I'll watch again. Something that's I've done that with the, for example, the Lewis Bartlett video on feeding. Because it's funny, is Facebook is a lovely place. I don't usually get on there and get too serious most of the time. It's not really my goals. You share fun stuff and things like that. It's kind of what I use it for, but not usually for debating topics. But anyway, you get a lot of information out there, and everybody's got their own opinions about things. And I'm not saying everything is wrong. Some things work better. Not an idea is wrong, but maybe there's better options or things of that nature. And, you always hear people talk about, and you don't always say, occasionally you'll hear people say, you shouldn't feed bees, it makes them weak, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, well, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind on it, but, just trying to educate yourself in certain areas to see what that looks like from a research perspective, where they've had, good field trials done on it. And I respect Lewis Bartlett and the research that he's done, understanding that there can be different things that could skew, research and things like that. But all in all, I believe that the research they've done on it's pretty solid. And that's one that I've gone back to many of times to watch, to see exactly what the graph showed, as far as feeding, maybe that even works for appropriate times too. When to feed. And we've talked a little bit before in other chats, and I know Charlie's pretty hung up on it right now, but, like Hive Alive, the additive or the other super strong microbials and things like that, and just, it'd be nice to see more research in those areas by parties that don't stand to make a dollar bill off of it. I'd really be curious and entertain all those sort of things and see what those guys see in it. So you can have some good videos like that for sure that you can keep queued up in your back pocket.
Well, I'm waiting for discussions or products to come out that attack the virus side of things instead of the insect side of things. One day
that's interesting.
Yeah.
I hear Todd's working on that right now.
Oh, I'm dabbling in something right now. I don't know where it's going to go though.
Nate, I don't know if you met Nathan at the Bee Expo. I ended up in the Hilco booth around the uncapping machine. The new uncapping machine that they had there. and Charlie's talking to the guy, and I ended up in a conversation with Nathan, who I'd followed on Instagram, and it was one of those, oh, I know you kind of thing. So we ended up having a half an hour conversation. I didn't hear anything at all about the uncapping machine, but it was a really good conversation. And he brings up Mike Palmer's The Sustainable Apiary. I don't know if you it's like the National Honey Show in England. They do an annual show, and they have big speakers come every year. And one year, Mike Palmer came. He did the Sustainable Apiary, one on comb honey, and another one that I forget. And those, as I was just getting started, really shaped my thinking about raising my own bees and using support colonies or resource colonies, and how I juggle stuff around to make sure my stuff is productive. That was a really, really big talk for me. Another one I heard recently that I think is really important that people listen to, especially people that are in the chats here that have kind of gotten to a certain experience level in their beekeeping. I don't know if you guys watch Bee Fit Beekeeping with Emily. She's been going out to California this year and doing a lot of stuff out in the almond orchards and interviewing a lot of folks. Recently, she had an interview with Ray Olivares. Did you guys get a chance to watch that one?
I didn't see that one. No.
Oh my God, listen to that guy talk. Anytime that guy talks, sit down and listen. He had a lot of really, really important things to say about the industry. Very subtle in how he was saying some of the things, but it was a really, really important conversation. I think it's been cool to watch her and Casey grow, and how they've gotten into the commercial industry, and how they've really tried to bring a lot of issues up in their videos. I'm not sure I agree with all of what they're saying, but bringing the story to the beekeepers through their YouTube channel, I think, is really important. So all beekeepers can understand all different aspects of the industry. Yeah, Casey's a wizard, man. I think he's a pretty interesting guy, for sure.
Yeah, those are two I really don't know that well. I watched a couple of her videos early on, and I think earlier on what she was doing was a little different than what she does now.
They've definitely evolved, for sure.
Evolved and kind of been more professional now and things like that. But early on, I just we've talked about it before, but they weren't somebody that I typically watched. I mean, I'm sure she's got great information and things like that now, and like you said, bringing the ability to bring information to people sometimes is very difficult. You have to keep a title and the information very entertaining, yet try to get good, solid information, truthful information across to the people that they can understand. But again, you're trying to keep an audience captivated as well. So that's difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it makes me, I haven't done it. I've only watched like 5 of the Nabby videos, but watching her video made me want to go back and watch Ray Olivares' talk, because he did do a talk at the Bee Expo. It was just one of those things. Have you ever heard those people where you're like, all right, whatever this guy is talking about, or whenever this person is talking, I'm going to sit down in that room and listen to what he has to say. That was the impression I got out of him. And I've never met him before. I've never heard him speak before. I just heard age and wisdom and experience, and definitely something that I think that a lot of people can glean something off of, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Are the Nobby videos out?
Oh yeah, they've been out for like a while now. Since I'd say like a month. Yeah.
Are we supposed to get an email notification?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't. I was kind of wondering what's going on, but
I don't think they sent you one, Todd.
Yeah, no, they didn't. I would have picked it up right away.
Well, maybe the email wire doesn't go all the way out to California. Maybe it kind of stops in the Colorado area and doesn't. They didn't have enough money to get out to the other side of the thing.
Get over the divide.
We could have
That's what it was.
It could have
That's
got
what
to
it
St.
was.
Louis, and they said, "Don't send anything to California."
Well, probably the day they were running that cable, the mountains were too covered with snow, so they just stopped it there and said, "You know what? Those guys are good."
Well, it could be though that internet cable causes cancer, and it's not allowed in the state.
Well, that could be too. Yeah, you never know.
Prop 65, ding ding.
So, Todd, you talked about buying our boxes. Do you go to Man Lake quite a bit to get your equipment? You're pretty close to their big warehouse there.
Well, Dadan has a warehouse here.
Sorry.
Man Lake's warehouse is about 4 hours north of me. But
that's what I meant was Dadan. Sorry.
Yeah. There's local box makers here. They actually are pallet companies, but they bought machines that do, like, you take the side of, you take the wood and you put it in, and it's got like 4 teeth in it, and it cuts out the dovetails. Yep. There's some pallet companies here that have those machines, so they just make boxes all day long. So right now I'm talking to one who happens to be new and has some very good prices on mediums, but he doesn't have the dip tank yet. So I'm like, I do not want to paint, and I do not want to buy them and then take them back to have them dip them. He said he would do that, but I'm like, no, once I get them, I'm not driving them back.
Yeah, and once you get them, you're going to put them into use, and once they're there to use, they're going to wax and propolis and everything all over it, and he's probably not going to want to dip them, or he shouldn't want to dip them.
He shouldn't, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he has a hell of a price. It's $10 a box, built.
Wow. Holy cow.
And, it's half-inch pine, so, I'm like, well, I like the price, but I'll have to wait for the dip tank to catch up. He said it's probably not going to be until this summer. Now, what I want to do is use those as supers, obviously, because they're mediums. I can maybe get away with making some come up in the fall by doing some heavy feeding, maybe even late summer. If in fact he gets this dip tank and everything's going. So, I still have time on my side, but $10 a box is a really nice price. So with everything coming out of it, with the frame and foundation, and probably looking around 15 or 16 bucks a box, which is great. Now, dipping, I haven't asked him about dipping, how much, he might charge a couple bucks a box. I don't know yet, but
did you see DC's comment there, Todd?
No, I missed it. Oh yeah, so that's the Max 21 is arriving at my place next week. I already ordered one. I talked to Jennifer the other day and got that going. So I was going to get the bigger one, but you know what? I'm good where I'm at. So
where does it go from 21? What's the next size up?
What is it, Tom? The 35 or something?
That's a 36. I didn't know if there was one in between that goes to. If there's not one in between, it goes to a 36 and then a 48.
So the 21 does 12 deeps or 21 mediums. So, or 22. I think it's 22 mediums. Mm-hmm. Actually, it has to be an even number. So, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at, I think.
I think once you get to a certain size, you have to worry about doorways and where you're putting that extractor. And 21 probably can fit through the doorway, and 32 probably can't. So,
well, if not, I'll cut it in half, and then get it inside the door.
Yeah. You could always take a hammer and bang it flat and then bring it in there and then get it back.
I could make it square. Yeah, I can make it square and get it through the door. And then just bang it out from the inside and everything's good.
I never understood that. Why don't they just make a square carousel and a square tank? Doesn't that make more sense? I mean, I don't know. You know what? I don't know.
Well,
DC, the UP put up their 32. So the 32 was the earlier one to the 36 because I had a 32. Worked well. Did
how many
great.
frames did that hold?
32.
What about it? So did it just do mediums? It didn't do deeps, or
No, it would do deeps as well. I'm trying to think. If I'm trying to go by memory, it would definitely do 32 deeps, or I'm sorry, 32 mediums or shallows, and it would either do 28 deeps or 32. I can't remember. I think you could fit as many deeps in there as well. Because when you get up to a certain size, it doesn't really matter at that point.
Yeah.
You still have room for the deep. And I can't remember, 32 was right on the edge. I can't remember if I had to hold 4 frames back or if I could get them all in. I don't recall, but the 36, I can get all 36 deeps in there if I chose to.
So I had an old, so, you know, my frames are all plugged up with nectar and stuff. And I thought, oh, I better get the extractor, you know, ready and stuff like that. So I pulled it out of the corner and, you know, greased it up and stuff. And then I plugged it in and I went to turn it on. Dead. That's the doornail. And, so I said, all right, well, I got to do something. I can't just sit here and, you know, lose everything because I can't extract honey. So I that's when I called Hilco and said, all right, here we go. Just did it.
Yeah, I would, like DC was talking about getting the 21, you'll need to buy a food grade grease gun. So that's something you have to think about. Certain extractors may not have a greasable fitting on them. I think I don't know about the smaller ones, most of the Hilco ones do require grease. I just bought it. I mean, we have 3 or 4 grease guns with the equipment that we run and stuff, but obviously I'm not trying to run regular grease inside of a food container. So we bought a specific real small one, and I've got small tubes of the food grade grease. It doesn't take much.
Yeah, I have that too. But you know what? I didn't even think about that. And I was talking to John in St. Louis about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about the control box. There was upgrades or something. And I didn't even think about the grease. So when you take that cassette out, there isn't a spot to drop some grease in, you know, where that center pin fits, or what's the deal?
So I will. Are you talking? Which one are you talking about?
Like on the 21. I know you didn't have the 21, but that cassette has to come out of the tank.
Yeah, it will. It basically rides on the older ones anyway. Rode on a ball bearing that was in there, and you would grease it from the underside. Now with the newer ones that he has, and I don't know that the 21 is, but he has some that are a bottom drive. I think the coupler is on the top side.
This is a bottom drive. So are there Zerks or something that I would have to?
So on my 36 bottom drive, there is a greaser not on the bottom anymore. It's on the top side. On there, there's a nylon bushing that he runs inside there.
Yeah, I got the springs, DC. I can't wait to see those in action.
They definitely help. You know, it's virtually impossible to get a centrifuge perfectly weighted all the way around. You're going to have some wiggle somewhere. It would be virtually impossible to do it. You always try to weight it with frames. If you're all having fat frames, but you only have so many of them, I would do opposite, you know?
Yeah.
You know, one thing to help ensure that you have all the same frames is let them draw them a little thicker. You know, if you have an 8-frame box, run 7. If you have a 10-frame box, run 9 in the supers and let them draw them and space them very evenly. And that makes a difference. You know, if you take a little bit of time on the front side, it definitely will save you time on the back side. I'm certain of that. When we're uncapping, we use that automatic uncapper. And the beauty is those knives, I took a lot of time on the front side to set those knives up at the depth that they cut. And how it positioned through there. So when it shaves it off evenly off both sides. So when I set each one of the combs inside there, virtually they're all same,
Yeah.
through and through. And that makes a huge difference. But, like you said, the springs themselves, you're going to have movement in it. If you can allow it to still move without walking across the floor, that's a good thing. Have never bolted any of my stuff down because I don't have a dedicated honey house specifically set up for that. And most of us in the chat here don't. So I think the spring feet are a next best option.
The thing that I've been using for the last 4 or 5 years is a pallet with, I can't remember if it's 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch plywood, on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all one solid piece. And I mark the holes from the feet, and then I drill those holes, and then I drop in lag bolts in there. So I have the extractor pinned down to the pallet.
Okay.
And then what I do is I put wedge shims on the corners, at least 2 corners of the pallet, and it doesn't move, and it does a good job. But
Yeah.
I think the springs are going to be an upgrade. So
yeah,
I'm not worried. Either way, I'll find out, what works best.
I'm not sure what Mark Miller's asking specifically on that question. A setting. I don't know what he means by that. I'm not following.
Maybe. Well, yeah, I don't know.
So I don't know about the 21. Some of the 32 and the 36 that I have, they haven't, and some of the smaller ones might have it too. I don't know. They have an automatic setting on there where John put a program into there. So when you click it to the automatic section, not the automatic click or switch, not the manual side, you can actually, when you hit start on the program itself, it actually runs. I can't remember now how John had it, maybe like for a minute on a slow speed, and then it ramps up to the next speed, which is it's like a variable speed drive, but it'll ramp up a little bit higher on the RPMs, and it'll hang there for like a minute or minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then it ramps up a little bit higher RPMs, and it hangs out there for a minute or two. I think the whole program was like, I can't remember. I want to say 10 minutes, but maybe it wasn't even that long. Maybe it was only 5 or 6. But you can switch to that. And honestly, when I would set them up in there, I'd on the automatic program, and I'd hit go, and I just let it do its thing.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I had it weighted wrong with the springs, it would just allow it to extract and do its own thing. You didn't have to touch it. I can be working on something else while that thing's running. You're not trying to sit on top of it and hold it down and keep it from walking across the floor. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, Mark.
I'm going to have to check that video out, Mike. Well, never mind. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying the springs. The other thing is I'm hoping, I talked to Jennifer about this at Nobby. My gasket on my uncapping tank, right at the gate, the honey gate.
Mm-hmm.
It got, when I shut the gate one day, that I didn't notice that the gasket was out a little bit, and I guillotined it, and I can't find it. And luckily, it was the last. I was done basically with all of my cutting or uncapping. I cannot find that ring anywhere on the planet. So
it's like a little O-ring, basically, is what it is, right?
But it's flat on one side and then curved, the rest of the way. So that flat side sits in, it sits down in the, it seats the gasket, and then it's
kind of like it would on a sanitary fitting.
I don't know. And I talked to John, and John said, he gave me some places to try, and I did, but they don't have those sizes. So I think what he's doing, or what they're going to do, at least what Jennifer was talking about, was ordering a bunch from the supplier and have them on hand here. She
Yeah.
said, I don't hear that an awful lot, but I'm sure it'll happen eventually.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, it probably will, because I
Well,
only had that thing for a year.
And at some point in time, let's be honest, if it's rubber or plastic or any type of material like that, it's going to degrade. It's not going to last forever.
I didn't look at McMaster car. I forgot all about that. I'll have to look at that tonight. Thanks, Michael.
Maybe even Granger too.
Granger, I did look at.
Okay.
No, they don't. They don't have it. So, oh well. I'll figure something out. I might just find. I don't. It doesn't even have to have a flat end. If it's the right size, I'll just shove it in there. I'll make sure it fits. I just need something.
Todd, what does your extracting setup look like? Are you in your garage? Like where are you at?
I'm in my garage right now. I have like part of it, it's all in one area, and I just do it all out there, and then I come inside and do bottling and all that.
So after this extractor, do you have everything you need for your honey extracting, or are you still thinking of buying more stuff?
No, I have everything. Yeah. I've got the whatchamacallit bottler,
the speed fill.
The speed fill, yeah. I've got that. I've got a creamer that I got from a Met, which is out of Turkey, which is what John is using Turkish steel now. So they make really good stuff. They really pay attention to details. Good. So he and I had a big discussion about that in St. Louis and talked for a while about that. So yeah, all I need is just more boxes. That's it. That's all I need. Boxes and frames. And I have another yard. I have another yard I can park bees on, but I don't have anything to put the bees in. So I have to wait until I pull the honey and then, put some out there. I'll make more queens. I'm in the same boat as you, Brian. I've ceased queen rearing for right now because, I'm maxed out. And I always remember Fat Bee Man's videos, almost every single video, and I watched them all for years and years. Almost every single video, he would say something like, "You can never have enough boxes. You'll always need more boxes than you think you need." Mm-hmm. And it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah. Every year, I underestimate the frames I need. I don't know why. I never sit down and do the math and actually think how many frames. I just kind of ballpark it and underestimate every single year. So that's definitely something I'm going to do differently next year.
Well, let me ask you this, Brian, just kind of thinking out loud. And this is how we've basically have done it ourselves is if like we've all talked about before, setting goals, making goals. What does that look like for us? Maybe we'll pivot a little bit based upon a few things, and that's fine. But we've always kind of tried to figure that out for ourselves too. It's like, okay, how do I have enough frames or enough this, that, or the other without overbuying, You don't want to get crazy with it and overbuying. You've got, much more stock than what you ever really even need, because that's going to require having that much stock is going to be a negative in a lot of ways too. I mean, on the bottom line, all sorts of areas, but, we would say, okay, how many frames am I going to introduce into new frames into our colonies? Each colony, how many frames are we going to put in there each year? What is that going to look like for us? Well, on average, it's going to be this many frames. So we'll overestimate by a percentage, on what we think that we're going to need. Because the reality of it is, I don't want to have frames from last year that I'm using this year. I want to have just enough, maybe a little bit of surplus, because again, the reality of it is, especially if you're using plastic foundation, that wax, as it ages, the bees don't take to it the same. So that's the drawback, in my opinion, of plastic. Yeah. So where is that fine line at? And I always err on the side of caution for having more than what I need. But, that's a really good question.
So you said you bought 1,000 frames this year. Is that right?
We did. Actually, it was a little bit more than that, but our wooden frames with plastic foundation, it was a pallet of 1,000.
Is that typically what's on a pallet, or can there be more?
I don't know. That's as high as he could get it in the back of a semi truck. Because when I unloaded it, I was trying to look up through the top of the skid steer to see where the top was at, and I didn't have a lot of room to go up as I was sliding it out, and it was kind of sketchy taking something that was, I don't even know how tall it was, 8 foot tall,
Yeah.
down around back to the shop, and we put it down there inside one of the garage bays down there. But that we had unloaded that like 5 a.m. in the morning, the morning of our workshop, because that's when he was coming through the area with the semi. So it was either my boys unloaded it or I unloaded it. And I said, if you can be there by, 5 to 5:30 at the latest, I'm going to be up at our thing. So he was coming through pretty early. So he took care of us.
Nice. Yeah, I'm like you. Good, Ted.
Did I miss the Premier frame sale? Did they already have their spring sale?
I don't know.
Besides Nobby?
Yeah. Every year they have a sale in the spring. I think I might have missed it because what I've been doing is and like you, Brian, remember we talked about this offline. You bought frames and foundation already built, and so did I. But I'll have to look on their website because I'm going to need some more. I'm going to need some mediums now.
I have not seen a sale from them this spring.
Because they've been doing it like last 3 or 4 or 5 years.
What type of frames do you guys like to use in your supers? Is there anything specific you use?
Boy, it's getting stormy outside.
In my
I can see it behind you.
supers,
Oh yeah.
no, not necessarily. I don't have a preference. I've been buying Beeline a bit recently just because they're cheap. They're assembled. I had a bunch of foundation, and they were the only one that I could buy assembled frames that with no foundation that I could find. So that was interesting. I definitely have some preferences around foundation, around ones I won't use from some negative experiences I've had in the past.
I might
But
go back.
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily have a favorite brand. Do you, Todd?
I don't want to name names, but there's one mainline store that it just seems the quality has gone down. The wood quality has gone down.
Yeah.
The cuts are off sometimes. I'll just say we don't have that store here in town in Fresno. Or no, excuse me. We don't have the one that I prefer here in Fresno. I have to drive 4 hours north. So, yeah, that's the only one I started out with their frames when I first started doing this like 20 years ago. But it seemed like the wood where the cuts and the wood itself just went downhill quick. And so I stopped buying from them and I went to Man Lake. I'll put it that way. So I like Man Lake.
You do?
I do. I do because the ears on the top of the sidebars, they're thicker. They're just thicker. I like that. They're a little more heavy duty. They're a little less apt to split. And if you jab them with a high tool, they won't crack right away unless you sit there and twist. I don't know. It just, and I like Premier too. And I'll buy from Premier or Man Lake. I haven't tried the one that, would you say Beeline? I'm going to have to look into that one. I haven't tried. Where are they out of?
There's a couple different places. I think I've been buying out of Illinois.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so they LTL what, a pallet? Are you ordering pallets or?
Oh no, I'm not ordering a pallet. it's free shipping over $150 though, so
Well, you can't beat
it's a
that.
pretty good deal. Yeah, it's not going to get here tomorrow. Like it took like a week and a half to get here, but it's worth it if you
I might have to look into
just
that.
if you plan it,
Mhm.
and that's where
Pre-assembled?
yeah, you can buy assembled, you can buy unassembled. And that's why I found them, because I was looking for assembled wax dipped boxes,
Mhm.
and 8-frame in particular are hard to find. So
Yeah.
that's where, yeah, Mark's right. Some vendors also get their wood frames from Beeline. Absolutely. Yeah.
Beeline's pretty competitive, honestly. I've looked at their stuff before in the past. Like you said, there isn't a location in Illinois. There's a different company that we use out of Illinois, which has some Amish family that owns it and runs it. That's kind of over toward JW's place. So when we go over there, we just bring a truck, several pallets on a truck or a trailer, what have you, and then try to pre-buy what we need really for the year, But then again, you can underestimate or overestimate things from time to time.
I'm going to have to look at it right now. Curiosity has got me.
Now, I wouldn't say I necessarily have a preferred frame, but I definitely don't prefer plastic frames.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what the brand is, I haven't tried many brands. The only plastic frames I have are the ones I've inherited. I haven't purchased any. So my preference is just wood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one plastic frames that I've used before, I didn't care for the way it flexes in my hand, especially if it's full of honey. I don't know. I'm more traditional. I don't know. Not that it's any better or worse. I guess everybody has their own things that they like. I just like a wooden frame myself. Works well. They seem like they're fine.
And Michael solved the plastic frame issue that I don't like, that flexibility. So, and I have to back up and retract what I said, because I have purchased some plastic frames, some of his, actually. I've just started putting those into my honey supers.
Yeah.
But I like the texture of those. I think that rough texture is really nice, as opposed to that smooth, slippery texture. And I like the stiffness of them. That's one of the things I don't like about those plastic frames. You try to work them in the box and they just flex on you instead of that rigidity of the wood. So those are some, good.
It's not an issue for you because you guys don't have hive beetles, but for areas that have hive beetles, those are places that the hive beetles can hide. So that's an issue that somebody down south or even myself would pay attention to.
Yeah. And those also still smell nice. The ones I got from him, I got at the Bee Expo, and they're still in the box. I've just opened the box and just started pulling them out, but they still smell pretty fresh. So what I don't want to do is put 8 of them in one super, because I'm always super conscious about weight and I'm trying to keep stuff as light as possible. So I'm just going to distribute them and just kind of have 1 or 2 per box, just to make sure I'm not picking up something that's a couple pounds more than what I want it to be.
Sure.
I definitely like their prices. I'm going to have to really look into that.
The Beeline? Yeah.
Because I'm probably going to look at starting off with getting those boxes, about 150 or 200 boxes. So I'm going to need a lot of frames. We might work out how many. You wouldn't happen to know, maybe I could find out on the website, how many are on a pallet.
That's a good question.
I'll just probably.
Are you talking assembled or not assembled?
Assembled.
Okay.
Yeah. $4.02 assembled. You can't, and it's double waxed. I mean, you can't beat that with the stick.
Yeah. I've said the same thing. I mean, everything that I've gotten, even the stuff we picked up there when JW was placing the order, he did a bunch for, and I'm like, I'll jump in on the order. I need some more deeps and some more honey supers. And I told him, I'm like, I want them assembled. I'm like, I'm not going to assemble them for the couple dollars that they wanted. I'm like, knock yourself out, assemble them. I'll bring them back here. I'll wax dip them, and that's all I have to do with it. So
I'll have to call him because what is 200 boxes is 1,600 frames, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'll see how many they can put on a pallet, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember now, and it might be a little different depending, because I don't know about the 8-frame stuff. Matt Ramsbottom was ordering some stuff assembled. I don't remember how many boxes went on there off the top of my head, and it might vary based upon the manufacturer, how many they put on a pallet too. But if they're shipping them LTL, they can only go as high as what the inside of a semi trailer can hold, which I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. I don't remember. I want to say 8 feet. Does that sound right?
No, it's got to be. I think it's more like 12 feet. I don't know. You know who's on here? Ask Mark. Mark would know.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, it's not 12 feet. I'm certain of that because height restrictions on those trucks can't go over like 13 or 13 and a half feet without oversized load.
Feet. I don't know. He's still on there.
9 feet. 8 feet.
7, 6.
I'm starting to second guess his answers he has here because I feel like he doesn't know either.
Who, Michael?
Yeah. First he says 9 feet, then he says 8 feet. Have to fit through the back door. That's right. You know, coming to Eric's answer.
Michael, how big is your freight door? How tall is your freight door? Because it'd have to be built to match the pretty much the height of the trailer inside.
That's going to be my big purchase next year. I need about, I don't know, 100 more supers. That'd be nice, and then I'd have all the equipment I need. I've got enough for 2 supers for every production colony right now, maybe 2.5. But it'd be nice to have. Just to be able to have at least 3 for every colony and 4 for my best. So that's going to be my big purchase next year, figuring out, or it might just kind of trickle in this year, buy 10 here, 10 there, just to kind of distribute the cost across the board. But that's my big equipment need right now, is just those honey supers.
So you guys want to know what's going on through my brain right at this very moment?
Yes, sir.
It's raining outside, and I knew that tomorrow after work I'd have to go out and cover the feeding holes on the tops of the lids because it's supposed to rain. We're supposed to get like an inch of rain over the weekend, and I just wanted to cover them up. I might put the tin plugs back in them, but it's pouring. It's pouring right now. So like crap. Oh well. At least my truck's getting washed.
There you go.
I don't know.
What do you got?
But it's pretty loud.
I can't hear it at all. What do you got going on with your bees in the next coming weeks, Todd?
Extracting.
Yeah.
I'm going to thin the herd with, as far as the boxes, get as many boxes off as I can, extract those, set up the new yard, start queen rearing again, all that. I can put as many pallets out there as I want. They have 25 acres. They have an old schoolhouse. They have an old schoolhouse that has a big, huge wood knot in the side of the building, and it's got bees coming out of it left and right, and it's all stained, so they've been there forever. So yeah, that's what I got coming up the next couple of weeks. But
and you said you have an event coming up in 2 weeks.
I have, on the 18th, I've got a big, it's called Country Roots. It's going to be a nice show, nice market. They do it it's an annual thing. I guess it's getting bigger and bigger. So um, one of the girls, I didn't know anything about it, and the organizer asked one of the gals I sell honey to if she knew anybody that did honey, if she knew a beekeeper, and she said, yeah, the guy that sells me honey, when because she makes sourdough bread and other breads, and she uses honey in her recipes, and so she said, yeah, call this guy, and so here we go. Man, it's absolutely pouring outside. I should go put 10 plugs in there right now.
Go film it.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'll get tore up.
Yeah, I know.
Holy. Yeah, thanks.
We need entertainment, Todd, and you're it.
I got to
put a white light on your forehead. Go start
yeah, white light. It's absolutely coming down in sheets.
I bet if JW was out there, he would do it.
Who?
JW.
JW. JW who?
He's probably fast asleep right now.
He probably is.
Sounded like he had a long day.
Yeah, I won't make fun of his back because I have back problems too.
Well, I mean, keep in mind he's 81 years old too, so
that doesn't make a difference.
You don't think so? I'm certain it has a very large bearing on how well he operates.
Eat a couple stink bugs, he'll be fine.
That's right.
And Tom, you said you have 100 queens coming in tomorrow, so dropping queens.
We do. I just messaged him here just a short bit ago, actually, and so I'm rather than them being.
Are those Prop 65 queens? Are they coming out of the state of California?
No. They're coming out of North Florida. Yeah, he shipped them this afternoon, and rather than them having them delivered to my house, I'm going to go up there tomorrow morning at like 6:30 and get them straight from the UPS sub store, which is only about 15 minutes from me. That way they don't have to bounce on the truck for a couple hours. I'll just get them, bring them back in here, do some quick checks on them, and probably put a little water on each one of them. and then we're going to start dropping them in.
So let me ask you a question. So did you communicate with the UPS store prior to line that up, or are you just going to show up and expect them to be there?
I'll just show up. They'll have them in there tomorrow morning, unless something weird happens. They're overnight shipped, and so I'll just show up there in the morning before they get loaded on the truck. Typically, I think they get loaded on the truck right before 7.
And how do you know exactly where they're going to? Did the sender send them to a specific address that you like?
Yeah, so there is a location that's where everything should. I mean, they're coming to my house,
right?
So if for some reason I miss it or whatever, they'll just deliver here tomorrow.
Okay.
And typically he's here in the morning, sometime 10, 11 ish, 12 ish, depending on what all he's got going on. But I would rather get them and start putting them in right away. Just trying to lessen any type of, that's being shipped UPS, not USPS or FedEx.
I totally agree with Mark there too.
Yeah. Yeah. I would pay extra to have shipped UPS over any of the other ones.
Yeah.
And our drivers are really good. And him and I mean, we got in 3 or 4 orders of queens last year. He's very familiar with the drill and such. But they'll go into a location that's about 15 minutes from my house, and then they get loaded on the delivery truck and then go out for delivery then. So I'll just get them before they get on the truck to come here. And matter of fact, one of my yards is out in that area. So I'll just drive from there straight over to the yard, start flipping lids off, do quick checks on the brood frames. And actually that yard particular, let me think. I think we set that one up over – I think it was over Queen Excluder. I can't remember, because if we're still over Queen Excluders, they won't draw any cells out in there. But if you put them over if I set them up over a double screen board, that'll completely separate them. So they would draw a cell. So I have to go in there and remove all cells and then introduce the queen in there. And if for some reason you have something that's not aged out, as far as the larvae that they can draw a cell on, you can just tape the end of those JZBZ cages with a piece of masking tape, and that stalls them from chewing that queen out. They'll still feed her and take care of her, and everything's good like that. But if they release her early, and then for whatever reason they have other cells, they're likely to probably ball and kill her. But if you kind of leave them in that hopeless queenless state, the acceptance goes way up. I think our acceptance last year was probably just short of 95%, which is spectacular. So we want to kind of see the same thing if we can.
Yeah.
So tomorrow's dropping queens, not making splits. That'll take all day.
Well, it's going to be both because I still have a couple yards to do, but what I'll probably do is go get the queens, drop some, and I have one more yard that Melissa and I got halfway through tonight that I want to finish that tomorrow. I know she's going to fuss at me because she's been pretty wore out, but I really, my first goal and my push is I have to get these splits done. You see Melissa drop a comment in there that first market of the season is on Saturday. And I don't think we're working. And I think my son is going to do that market for us actually. Because again, I am going to work day in, day out until all these splits are done and all the queens are introduced. So that's my first priority right now. So we'll drop queens and finish the split on that yard, and probably either Saturday afternoon or Sunday, I'll finish up the other 2 yards. I think I have 3 yards.
Now you make splits tomorrow. You can drop a queen cell in there, or the mated queen in there immediately, right?
Yeah, I will. I'll drop her in. I'll just tape it so that they can't release her. I'll just tape it so I can ensure that stall it for a few days, and then I'll go in, double check my split, tear down any cells that might be present, and then untape it. And then from that point, they'll just candy release her slowly. So it may take a couple days, depending on how soft the candy is.
You ever have them never release the queen?
No, they've always released her. I will even say this, talking about little oops moments that we have. Yeah. There's actually a queen last year that I found that I forgot to untape. Don't know how that happened because I usually go consecutively down the line. Somehow, some way, I put a queen in there and I forgot. And I went back through and I was doing a hive check on, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I pick it up. I don't know how long it took them to do it because I don't remember what my check back was, but they chewed the tape, chewed the candy, and released her. So eventually they can get through it. Yeah. But it might have been that was probably the slowest release ever. It was probably a week or maybe even 10 days before they ever got her out of there.
I had one time where I wonder if it was a queen candy issue where I put the queen in there, mated queen. I had like 30 of them, and it happened to 2 or 3 of them. I put it in there, walked away, came back like 10 days later, and they still hadn't released the queen. So I don't know if the queen candy was too hard or something, but I had to, at that point, direct release them all because I was like, holy cow, what the heck happened? I was expecting to go in and see like capped brood at that point, checking to see she was laying and everything. And there's like 2 or 3 of them. And they were still sitting right in the cage. I've also had the ones where they have the little cork, plugs where the worker bees will actually chew out that cork plug or chew around it and release that queen themselves. So don't think that cork is as good as the tape, right? It's right. Not going to keep those worker bees from releasing that queen.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. So I see Melissa saying you still have 2.5 yards to split plus our home yard. Would you say you're halfway done splitting, Tom?
So we have 8 yards total. Okay. So I'm on the
2/3.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's still a little bit left to do, and that's fine.
All right. Yeah. And you have 100 queens coming in tomorrow. If you've got 200 something colonies, you're going to need more queens for more splits.
Yes.
What's the plan there?
Well, I didn't quite overwinter 200 colonies. I think we lost like 17 or 18 colonies in there. which again has been our best year as far as the loss, which is pretty spectacular. But I also, now I'm talking about actually into winter, before winter set in, if there was a colony that didn't make the grade,
Yeah.
I would pick the two better of the queens, squash one, combine them. So basically,
Yep.
I'm just accepting my losses in the fall. And we had maxed out somewhere around 217, 218, 219 last year. I even sold off some late season colonies, which I actually may do that again here this year too, honestly. I may actually turn out some whole colonies, depending on where we're at the end of the day. I have some equipment, some wooden boxes that we were from our first couple years that's painted and is still in good shape, but I don't want that in my operation. So one of the easiest ways to move that out is I'll sell it with bees in it. So I'll sell a double deep colony with bees, bottom board, lid, the whole 9 yards, and I'll sell the whole thing off. So Melissa and I talked about that. I'm probably not going to do a lot, but I may do as many as 8. Again, just trying to cycle out equipment that is not the exact stuff that we're wanting to use.
So for your next round, will you buy more queens, or will Melissa graft and start grafting your own?
So we already have that set up. So I get 100 queens this week. Next week on Friday, I get shipped in, I think it's 85 or 90 queens. And then the week following, I think we have another 75 queens coming in. And then those should be for the club. I did tell the club, I said, if you don't sell all those, I said, I will buy whatever's left.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time. What I'll do is I'll make a small splits with those, even smaller than the ones I'm making now. And I'll just run them in there. And when somebody's like, hey, I need a queen, be like, yep, got one. So we'll make a small split, put her in there, let them kind of continue to grow when we need to. We'll just steal them back out. So,
do you want to talk about your business here? Do you want to talk about this question?
So there's a small queen breeder that I'm using. He's not on the open market. And honestly, I probably disclosed his name before, but I'm not going to now, because I think part of him becoming a little more popular has not allowed me to get all the queens that I wanted right out of the gate. So I'm not going to disclose his name here.
And are you getting? Well, I'll ask you this: are you getting all your queens from the same source?
I am. Mm-hmm.
And of those queens, almost 300 of them, how many of them are going into your operation versus how many are going into nukes to be sold or to be sold otherwise?
Yeah, so most of what I'm going to build is going to be sold. Melissa, since she is back in action in this year, my goal is to graft, or have her graft rather. That was our plan, her to graft and to requeen any queens that are not from 25, or I'm sorry. Yeah. I only want to have at the end of this spring season 25 and 26 queens in the operation. Anything else I don't want. There's a few green queens that we have out there that we found were laying beautifully. And I'm like, hey, Melissa, let's just write on the top, green queen, beautiful laying pattern. So what we'll do is we'll take that queen when we go to requeen. We'll pull her off with a little split off to the side. We'll just run it as a resource colony. And then we'll probably, later on this year, we'll just combine it back and get rid of her. So if she happens to do well and continues to do well, she won't be in a production colony though. Again, just trying to ensure younger, more vibrant queens. But I have some 2025 queens that I found that I didn't like. Those are getting replaced too. So just because, and the same thing would go for a 2026. If I got a 2026 queen, ran her, she might have been doing good at first and all of a sudden doesn't look good, she'll get replaced. So that having the queen color on there just helps me to understand what year they're from. But that doesn't guarantee that they won't continue to stay in there long term. Yeah, it'll be a few weeks before that. We do have a busy schedule. We have to get other things taken care of first, but that is not the highest on our priority list, but it's one of them on our priority list.
Yeah, with 3 orders of mating queens coming in, you've got that. That's gonna fill up your plate pretty well.
Definitely.
Right on. Well, we're all in that place where spring is keeping us busy, and as busy as we want to be or as busy as we can be. hopefully other folks out there are having as productive a spring as we all are, enjoying the fruits of a fairly good winter and spring abundance. Hopefully you all are using this spring to build up as much comb and bees as you want in your future for this year. Definitely this is the time of growth, right? In the season, and riding that wave that the bees and the environment is providing for you is definitely what makes us sustainable, right? Trying to raise queens in August, September isn't something that works really well for me, but trying to raise queens and pulling out comb at this time of the year, I think works really, really well. We're starting to lose folks. We're down to 30 people. We had it up pretty good. Thanks all for hanging in there. Appreciate it. I know you all aren't on the West Coast, so we appreciate you all hanging in with us. Todd, Tom, thanks for the great conversation. Love checking in with you guys, hearing how things are going in the different parts of the country. Any other last words before we close things out?
Hope everybody has a good beekeeping season.
Yeah.
Have a
and
great
have fun.
spring. Yeah.
That's what I'm really focusing on this year, Todd, is trying to have fun and enjoying my bees and not stressing out. And if they're gonna swarm, they're gonna swarm. They'll just make a new queen.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stress a little bit, Brian.
Oh, I will too. I'm just gonna try not to.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone, have a great night. We'll be on Todd's channel in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Which is April 23rd. My calendar is open on that, so that should work out for everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks, everyone. Otherwise, or not. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow on Charlie's, or Saturday on Joey's, or Sunday with Tim and Hannah. Monday with Bill, Tuesday with Tom, or sometimes Bob, Wednesday with the stream team's been mixing it up recently. It was a really nice conversation. You know what I enjoyed about the stream team conversation this week was the YouTuber conversation. I am not a good video maker, so listening to those three guys, Brian, Bruce, and Mike Barry, talk about making videos, that was really interesting for me. That was a different conversation, and that's something I don't have the skill set, the time, the energy to put into. So I did appreciate them kind of talking about that process a little bit. There's always something good happening on one of these chats. Keith Spillman on Thursdays, such an interesting perspective of what he's doing out there in North Carolina. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you on one of the future chats. Have a great night all.
Good night, everyone.